There's Robert. But he needs to go get. Are you going to go get breakfast?
I'm sorry?
Okay.
Oh, I'm good.
Are you sure?
Well, yeah, I mean, should I or?
Yeah, quick.
Okay. But do it.
You can do things fast.
Hey, Laura.
Thank you. What'd you say?
I said, you're probably like this dude. That's a good picture, Lori.
Oh.
Good. Look.
Okay.
How about those soft skills? Teaching through non-example. Very powerful. We're not waiting for you. Ow. Excuse me, could you put this knife out of my bag? This needs it back.
Well, good morning, everyone. We're going to get started.
Good morning.
My name is Laurie Dawkins, and I am this year's conference chair. We do want to thank Essential Education for sponsoring this morning's breakfast. Let's give them a round of applause. I do want to take a few moments just to thank the conference committee. We've been working for the last year, working diligently, working through many different issues related to the conference because of things surrounding COVID. And so we're so happy that we were able to bring the conference this year in person to Harrisburg, and it's nice to see all of you. I'm sure all of you probably feel good to get back and connect with one another. So we do thank you for coming here for the next 2 days. I do want to thank Liz Garrity, who is our organizational consultant, Ilsa Powell-Diller, Michelle Campbell, Chrissy Klinger, Jeff Woodland, Denise Alexander, and Cheryl Heister for their contributions to putting this conference together. So if we could give them a round of applause. I do have a cancellation. Chrissy Klinger, unfortunately, cannot be here today. She was scheduled to present Building a Better Workforce. The session is scheduled for 9 a.m. in the Harrisburger room, so that session has been canceled. I do want to remind everybody, in your bags is a vendor pass. And if you make your way around to each of the vendors today and tomorrow, they will give you a little stamp. And then at tomorrow's lunch, you will drop off those completed forms or those passes at the registration table. And then we will be selecting a winner for a special prize. I also want to remind everyone that there are no sessions this afternoon. We are going on, there are 3 Capitol tours scheduled. If you have not registered for a Capitol tour, the registration forms are out at the registration desk and you can sign up. We do ask that, and you'll see there's a notation on that form, that you arrive 20 minutes beforehand in the lobby. So we will be walking over to the Capitol, so hopefully the rain will hold off, and if you have an umbrella, I highly recommend that you bring that along. Okay. Yes. Oh. Sorry. All right, without further ado, I'd like to introduce Lee Cruz. Lee Cruz, he is our keynote speaker this morning. He is currently the program director, case manager for the YMCA of Reading Berks, and he is the author of Transformation, How to Get Your 180 Degrees, and Lee will be talking a little bit more about this book. He is currently the CEO and president of Transformation TL, a nonprofit organization for men in recovery from a substance alcohol abuse disorder, and vice president of the Reading Latin American Motorcycle Association. Lee is also an active board member of numerous boards in the community and always is looking to take on a new project. He is a person in long-term recovery from a substance alcohol abuse disorder and is currently over 9 years sober. He is an advocate for the Hispanic population in Reading, and one of his accomplishments was the start of a Spanish-speaking transitional living program for men in recovery from a substance alcohol abuse disorder. Lee has also formed excuse me. He has also worked with the Literacy Council of Reading Berks and has offered English as a second language to those individuals in that program, as well as GED classes. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce Lee. Let's give him a warm welcome.
Thank you. I just hit enter, right? Enter.
Oh, okay, they've set us up with that to
So I just
advance
hit
it.
the button. Good morning. My name is Lee Cruz. Thank you, Lori, for having me. So let me just pull this up, because I don't want to forget nothing. I wrote the beginning part of my speech, and then I'll get right into my story. So let me just find it. I had it out. All right, here we are. I would like to start by introducing myself. My name is Lee Cruz. I was born in Brooklyn, New York, then moved to Long Island by the age of 3. We will get back to that, but first I would like to thank the PACE Committee for having me here this morning and everyone involved with getting me here. I could sit here this morning and remember the day like it was yesterday when I was given the news of being the speaker here this morning, as if it were yesterday. I was blown away. That lasted about 10 seconds. Then I was like, oh no, what am I going to talk about? Instantly, what came to my mind was what makes someone want to change, what gives them the power, the strength, and the courage to stand up and say, that's it. I have done it that way my whole life, and it has not worked. I'm going to tell you what helped me. It was a sense of motivation. My motivation for change came from being able to view myself through the eyes of my daughters. Being able to view my life through her eyes gave me the ability to change my course in life and become a new man. I just wanted to stop being a terrible father, a terrible husband, a terrible brother, a terrible friend. I can't even say friend. I never had any. All I know is I just wanted to be a better version of myself. My perception in my own mind when my daughter looked at me is that she believed I was worthless. I was good for nothing, and I was just good at starting chaos at home. Treated mother terrible. I was an alcoholic. I was an embarrassment to her and all around her. All that manifested inside and gave me the courage to stand up to my addiction and say, this is it. I need a new life. To this day, that motivation keeps me moving forward. And when people say, Lee, that's enough, you have done enough, to me it's not enough. I want to be able to leave a legacy behind when I'm gone. And my daughter can say, my dad built that, my dad did that, my dad was an alcoholic and a menace to society, but he turned it all around and became a great man who helped others achieve the same. So that's what I wrote down because I didn't want to forget that. And I did want to thank my daughter for coming up here and being my motivation. So I came into recovery. I was in my addiction for 28 years. It all started, I was born in Brooklyn, New York. I was raised in Long Island, not in the Hamptons. We were the first Spanish family to move into Long Island back in 1973. Again, I didn't know English. It was racist times back then. So the island was full of Italians, and we were the only Spanish folks. So I got into a lot of fights. From the age of 4 to 12, 14, I was getting sexually molested at home by a step-uncle. My mother left me, my biological mother left me on the counter of a welfare table when I was 6 months old. My father had committed suicide 6 months prior to me being born, so I already had a whole messed up life. My step-parents that raised me, they didn't even know what life was about. They got married, they was young. She had 3 kids. The guy that raised me, he was actually my uncle, my biological uncle, and he just needed somebody to help raise me because he ended up with me. So it was me and my sister. We had a pretty rough upbringing. We were the dark-skinned 2 siblings of the house. His wife was a light-complected Spanish woman, and we were dark. So we were the cleaners, we did all the yard work, we did all the work. So it was pretty rough. Needless to say, all that stuff that was happening at home had me act out in school. So when I went to school, I became a menace. I used to get into trouble. I got tired of getting picked on, learned how to fight. I took up martial arts, took up boxing, and used it for all the wrong reasons. Got into a lot of fights. Fought teachers, got kicked out of schools every other month. So I was a menace, needless to say. Anyways, moving along, all that, what am I looking for? So all the childhood traumatic events led me into becoming a person I didn't want to become. And I didn't know what was happening. I just became that person. So I became angry. I became shy. I stayed alone. I was guarded. I didn't trust nobody. I didn't love nobody. I didn't know what love was. People told me they loved me, but they used to abuse me. So I became that. And that was a very angry man. So Later on in life, I got kicked out of the state of New York. I ended up getting into trouble. I took a car and I crashed it into a house, nearly killing 2 youngsters. They were toddlers. They were in the kitchen. The car went through the front window, and they just walked out of the kitchen, barely missing them. So I got sent upstate New York, a place called Camp Cass, Rensselaerville, New York, on top of the mountain there. If you ever been to Albany, it's right on the top of the mountain. So I was there for 2.5 years. After those 2.5 years were up, they gave me a bus ticket and $100 to the next best city in America, which is Camden, New Jersey, 1984. Best times to be there. I went there, and it was definitely an experience. I was going to Woodrow Wilson High School, and I knew I didn't want to be there. So I learned how to deal drugs there, survival. Then I ended up going on a TV show called Dancing on Air, and I did that just to stay off the streets. Did that for about 6 months. I was their, what do they call that? I was like their regular dancer. I was there every day. But anyways, I got tired of that, and I just needed to get out of there. So I ended up moving to Allentown, PA. I moved to Allentown in 1986. And when I came to Allentown, I didn't have a mom, so I was just looking for somebody to love me. And I definitely really wanted to have a good life, but it didn't work out that way. So I ended up meeting a girl at my first job. I worked at a McDonald's, and I met this lady, and we moved in together. I had 3 kids with her in 5 months. In 5 years, my bad. That's pretty quick. But in 5 years, I had 3 kids. I ended up having a 4th one in between there because I ended up splitting up with her. So I ended up with 4 kids in 5 years. And then we separated. I ended up marrying a lady within 2 weeks. I ended up having another kid. Make a long story short, I had 7 kids. 5 boys, 2 girls. My youngest, right there, I haven't had a kid since, thank God. But she's my life. But I remember always getting in trouble. The reason I got in trouble was because I just didn't care about life. I didn't care about what happened to me. I didn't care about anybody around me. I didn't trust anybody, and I thought everybody was out to get me. I didn't trust women. I always had women issues. I just couldn't get close to anybody. So I ended up doing jail time for child support because I figured I didn't have to pay for kids I wasn't allowed to see. So once my first relationship broke up, she wouldn't let me see my kids. So I was like, I'm not gonna pay you any money. So me being arrogant, I'd get in trouble, I'd go to jail. And I was okay with it because she wasn't gonna get the money. Needless to say, that don't ever stop a curing. So over the years, I did about 9 years in prison, in and out, layaway plan. But when I was in jail, I would look for the Bible, and when I'd leave jail, I'd leave the Bible. So when I left Allentown, I moved to Berks County. I was married with my youngest daughter's mom. We were married 20 years, but we never got to know each other. We didn't even know what our favorite colors were. We didn't really, it was pretty much a blur. Like, we cared for each other the way we only knew how to care for each other at that time. We didn't know nothing about each other. But when I came into recovery, this picture here was the day I got baptized. I came to recovery through church. Her mom told me, you need to fix your life. We ended up homeless. I've been in trouble so many times. And I ended up homeless, and my kids had to end up living with the neighbor so they can continue going to school. We lived in Hamburg. And I got my last DUI, and I remember saying to myself, man, I really messed up this time. We just got our place back, and I messed up. So 2 weeks went by. I kept drinking a little bit here and there, but I knew I wanted to stop. And I went to church the one day, and I just gave my life over to God. I was just tired. I remember like a 800-pound weight on my shoulder wouldn't let me get up out of my chair. And I finally found the strength, and I got up, and I gave my life over to God, and from that day forward, I'm standing here. But there was a lot of work involved, a lot of sacrifices. I had to let my ego go. I had to remember that I'm not the strongest excuse me, I'm not the strongest man on earth. And that it's okay to cry, and it's okay to allow others in, and just be honest with how I truly felt. So once I started doing that, I remember texting my pastor. My pastor used to dress really cool. So I was like, this guy's all right. And he sounded like Al Pacino. So when he would preach, I was like, man, this guy's all right. And then when I found out he could text, I was like, 60 years old and this guy's still texting? So it was easier for me because I didn't like to talk to people face to face. It was just easy. So I would text him at 4 o'clock and I'd have questions for him. And he'd tell me, read the Bible. And he treated me like he was Mr. Miyagi, and I used to hate that. But it worked. So, there came a time that I decided school was bad for me. I was in special ed growing up. I thought it was because I was smart, because they would skip me grades, and back in those days, if they didn't want to deal with you, they just skipped you. And I got skipped 3 times. And I would always tell people, yeah, I'm just smart. But here I'm walking into the special ed room. I couldn't concentrate. And back in them days, they would just give you Ritalin, I think it was called. But I never took them. So they would just keep me in this room, and my hardest subject was math. I just couldn't get math. Well, there was an incident I had with a math teacher one time that I did the math problem differently than the class did, and he tried to make a fool out of me and kept yelling at me, so I hated math after that. So throughout life, whenever I had a math class, I would get all clammy and I couldn't study it, even when I went to college. So I said, I'm not taking math anymore. But I ended up making a decision, and I said to myself, I gotta go back to school. I gotta get my education. I gotta get my GED. If I could only get my GED, I could probably do something better with my life. And I ended up having to go do a program at the YMCA of Reading, a 90-day program for my last DUI. And when I went there, I was talking to my case manager about it, and he had said something. So then I ended up going back home. My youngest daughter's mother and I tried to work on our relationship. It didn't work out, so I ended up making a decision going back to school. So the one day, we called the Salvation Army in Hamburg, and we asked them if they knew anything about GED classes, and they said yes. And they said, you have to be here by 4 o'clock in order for you to be able to be registered and start in September, I believe it was. And I was like, okay, I'm gonna be there. So I didn't drive, I didn't have a license, so I had to ride a bicycle. So I quick jump on this bike, and I'll never forget this. I'm riding down the street like, yes, I'm gonna start a whole new life. I'm biking down the street, and all of a sudden the chain pops, book. And I'm like, oh man. So by the grace of God, I look over and there's this auto shop right on 3rd Street. And I walk it over there, they fixed it. And I quick get to this Salvation Army and they're closed. And I was like, oh man. So I knock on the window and this little young lady, I wish I remember her name. But this lady comes to the door and I told her the whole situation. I got scratches on me. I said, man, I just fell off my bike. I had to get here, and now you're closed. I need this help. I need to get this class. And she's like, I'll tell you what. I'll sign you up. And she signed me up. She sent my paperwork over. And that's where the Literacy Council came into my life. So I ended up, now, I don't have a license, so now I have to take a bus. I left my job I was making money, but I decided to make a sacrifice. And, when you come into recovery, sacrifice is a big one in your life. You have to make a lot of sacrifices, you got to make decisions, and you got to live by them. Not everybody's going to understand them, but as long as you know where you're going, that's all you got to worry about. And I would take the bus from Hamburg to West Lawn 3 times a week, and it was a 3-hour ride because I had to switch buses, and I was the happiest person on the bus. I would just get on that bus, and I'd ride and be singing in my... People probably thought I was crazy, but I was a new man. I was feeling alive, and I knew what my plan was. I didn't know where I was going, but I knew I had a plan. But I knew that I had to get my GED. And I remember my first day at the Literacy Council. I got there. At the time, I used to smoke, and I'm leaning on the wall, sitting there, and Lori walks up, and she's like, "Who are you?" And I told her who I was. She's Lori. Had a really nice conversation, so I felt really comfortable. Ended up going in there. They had coffee and everything downstairs. I was like, this is all right. So I used to like going there. I didn't like when I had to take my tests. When I took the tests and found out my reading level, my math level, every level in my education, I was like, you gotta be kidding me. I'm 41 years old. I can't be like this. They were really low. I'm talking about 2nd, 3rd grade reading level, math level. I could count money. That's about all you get from me. But it was bad. But then time went on. I was there, and I remember saying, man, I'm never going to be able to get this. I would open them books, and, the letters just start jumping around, and the numbers, and it used to blow my mind, and I'd be so... it'd make me anxious. And I remember just saying, I don't know if I could do this. But every day I would sit down and I'd talk to Lauren. I made it part of my day to talk to Laurie, talk to Bev. I'd even talk to Ryan. And at the time, we weren't as close as we are today. But I would just talk to everybody. And it's like they understood. And I was open. I'm very transparent. Right away, I told Lori, I gave my life over to God, and I got to change my life around. And she's like, oh, really? And she's like, everybody there was a Christian, so it felt like the right place to be. And they treated me really good, and I appreciate you guys for that. Because I'll tell you what, when somebody goes back to school at the age of 41, or the people that were there, the barriers that we had, like taking a bus for 3 hours. Some of the girls that were in class with me, they had babies and jobs, bad relationships, going through certain stuff, and they still had to make it there. There's girls that were in my class that they were living a rough life. And, I was living a rough life too, but I knew that I was okay, right? At the end of the day, I knew I was gonna be okay because it wasn't gonna be any worse than my last day of use. I just knew I never wanted to go back there. So I knew things were getting better. So I appreciate the love, and compassion, and the empathy that you guys showed while I was there. You guys continue to do that to this day. I don't see you as much, but I know that you guys are there and always support everything I do. So time went on, probably a month went by, and I don't know how I ended up getting my grades up as fast as I did. Things just started coming back. And they ended up putting me in a fast track, is that what it's called, fast track program? Because the time I went for my GED was when they switched everything over. And I was either gonna get it or I was not gonna keep going. So I remember Pat being my teacher, Miss Kathy Martin, I love that lady. That lady pushed me, man. She was tough, but she was good. I ended up going to a hospital, the bottom floor of St. Joe's Hospital, and I would go there, and she said, Lee, I don't care what you think, but just know that you're gonna pass this test. And I was like, for real? She's like, yeah, you're gonna pass. I was like, all right. So I would go there, I'd show up, and when I remember the day that we took the test, we went to RAC. I think that's where we went. And Lori said, "You got this." And I went in there, and I don't know, it was the first test ever in my life that I actually took, and I didn't have to go back and read anything. I was like, man, that wasn't that bad. And I walked out, and I got my letter, and I passed. I was like, wow. So, I owe you guys that. I appreciate all that work you guys did with me, because I'm not easy. And I'm always loud, and I like to eat, and I like to drink coffee for free. So, you got that, I'm good. But I really appreciate all that. But what I got out of all that was that the very next day that I got my GED, the very next day, I applied for RAC, which is our community college out in Reading. I was so happy. I remember taking pictures. I used to dress like I was a kid. I'd put on different colors, sneakers, hats, and just walk to school and try to be the cool kid. And here I'm the cool old man in class. But it was all right. It was cool. And then I got a job with the YMCA. I started out as a case manager's assistant. So now I'm starting to get confidence. I started feeling really good about me. I started talking to my daughter. You got to understand, when I came into recovery, I didn't have relationships with anybody. My kids hated me. They thought, this guy's sick. There's something wrong with him, which I was. They just didn't know I had a disease with substance abuse or alcohol. So I started rekindling my relationships. So this picture here, this is my mother that left me at the welfare office when I was 6 months old. That's the house I grew up in, back in Long Island. And that's me and Julie receiving my first check of funding from the United Way. So, there's a lot of pictures in here. They're not in order. But over time, what I learned was that I had to learn to forgive people. And I had to sacrifice for everything I wanted in life. And if I wanted to continue to move forward, I had to keep looking at the people I say I love. My daughter, I love her to death. My soon-to-be wife, Julie, she came into my life when I was 4 years sober. I was single for 4 years, and I just wanted to work on myself. So over the years, I've worked on forgiveness. I believe that the more you forgive people, you'll be forgiven for everything you've done in life, and you'll continue to get blessed, right? That's how it's worked out for me. I'm super blessed. I'm here, right? That's a blessing. To me, I'll never forget when she said I was going to be speaking here. I was like, you're crazy, wow. That blew my mind. For me, that's a big thing. My teacher told me I was going to be dead at 18. She was wrong. Here I am at 52. But, my mom, that picture I just showed you, she left me at the welfare table when I was 6 months old, and I never seen her the rest of my life. Met her once, and she was the exact person I thought she'd be. She was drunk, addict. She had 14 children. Probably never raised any of them. She sold 2 just to get back to Puerto Rico. But that's just her story, right? 6 months before she died, I had somebody reach out to me and tell me that she was in the hospital at a cancer center in Virginia. And I told Julie, I said, I'm not going out there. I could care less about that lady. And she told me, you sure that's what you want to do? I said, yeah, that's what I want to do. But then I was depressed in my room for about 3 days, and Julie got really brave and told me, that's it, you're not going to be laying here. This ain't the man I met. And she opened up the curtains, and she said, you better make a decision now. And I was like, oh, okay. So about 10 minutes later, I got out of bed, I got ready, and I jumped in my car, and we drove down to Virginia. And we went right to the cancer center. So for 6 months, my first visit there, I didn't really talk to her. Third visit was when I forgave her. And then for the next 6 months, we rekindled the relationship. We built the relationship, and then she died. But I gave her peace. She gave me the peace I deserved and needed. It was a very sad time. She died in Julie's hands. So we're hooked up together forever, I guess. That was a really rough time for me. That lady never gave me anything. And I remember one day she told me she was gonna give me something, and I was so excited. I was like, wow, she hid a case of money for me. And she told me, yeah, go in that closet right there and get that pillow. And I was like, a pillow? She's like, yeah. Did you see that pillow with all the colors on it? It was like one of those rainbow pillows you get at Walmart. And I grabbed this pillow, and I'm like, this lady's serious? She said, that's for you. And at the time, I didn't get it. And then she said, oh, yeah, I got something else. See that book of stamps over there? That's for you, too. And I remember telling Julie that on the phone, and she's like, really? I said, yeah. So I remember driving back home by myself with this pillow. I put a seatbelt over it. True. I put a seatbelt over that, and I drove back home, and I remember when she passed, that pillow comforted me. So, it's getting short? Okay. So again, that's part of my story. I kept out all the really deep stuff, but I do have a book here. I have 50 copies actually here. It's called Transformations: How to Get Your 180 Degrees. It's a really quick read, but a lot of valuable information in it. There's 50 free copies for the first 50 people that get over there. Then I have 23 copies at $20. I do have hoodies, they're $40, and I have t-shirts that are $20. So if anybody wants any, you can come on over. If you want to talk, take pictures, I'll sign the books for you, whatever. And I appreciate you guys having me. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Lee, for that inspiring story. And, all of us here in this room, what Lee shared, some of the things that he shared this morning, even though he was coming to the Literacy Council of Reading Berks, and Bev and I and Ryan all got to know him, I never heard some of those details. So I think it's important that, sometimes our students are not revealing to us everything that they've gone through. And sometimes we see their behavior and we might question, do they really, really want to do this? But I think some of the things that Lee shared, just the fact that we're encouraging them and making them feel comfortable in that environment is so important. So, I just thank you for all that you do, because Lee is a perfect example of someone who overcame so many barriers and is now running his own organization. He's achieved getting his high school diploma, going to college, wrote a book. Just an amazing story of how adult education was that beginning, that catalyst that actually launched him forward. So we thought it was important for you to hear that this morning, to be encouraged, to know that what you're doing just means so much to people. And as he said, there are 50 copies, complimentary copies he's making available for you. So the first 50 people that get over and speak with him, he's willing to sign that book. Sign the books. Our first session is scheduled to begin at 9 o'clock, and it is 9 o'clock. So what I would ask is that if you could just take a quick 5-minute break and then get to the sessions as quickly as possible. Again, I just want to remind you that Chrissy Klinger's session is canceled this morning, and she was scheduled to be in the Harrisburger room. So just another reminder, don't forget to sign up for the Capitol tours out at the registration desk, and have a great day. Thank you.